Hello and welcome to the Innovation in Retail panel. First, I'd like to thank the Australian Retail Association for hosting this event and all of today's discussions. It was especially interesting for me to hear about the importance of people in leadership and new emerging use cases for artificial intelligence in retail. But in this panel, we're going to focus on innovation and specifically the role that partnerships can play in driving it. Before 2020, many established retailers viewed those born in the cloud as their competitors. But when COVID hit, that dynamic changed pretty quickly. Overnight, those retailers had to reach their customers in entirely new ways. They had to keep up with huge swings in demand and customer preferences. They had to handle an enormously complex logistic task. And to do all this, they had to innovate rapidly. In many cases, the fastest and most efficient way to do this was by partnering with a startup or scale-up partner. Whether that was for last-mile logistics or an online payment solution, bricks and mortars retailers needed the agility and speed that digital disruptors could offer. But what now? Will this spirit of innovation and partnership persist beyond the crisis? Well, we're going to answer these questions and talk about innovation in retail more generally. I'd like to introduce our panelists today from our startup community. First, we have Brenton Gill. Brenton is the co-founder and managing director of Redaro. Redaro is an Australian-born global technology platform that helps retailers like JB Hi-Fi and IKEA digitize and optimize their last-mile supply chain. And might I add, while keeping their customer data in control.
Hi, Marcy. Great to see you as always, and very excited to be on the panel. Thank you to Microsoft and the ARA for including us.
Next, I'd like to introduce Hilary Watson, product lead at Black AI. Founded in Melbourne, Black AI is another one of retail's leading disruptors, focusing on AI in physical stores.
Thanks so much, Marcy. Really excited to be here.
And lastly, we have Joseph Peck from my hometown of Seattle. Joseph is the head of partnerships and business development at Observa, the AI scale-up that's creating digital footprints for physical objects in retail settings. While Australia is unique in a lot of ways, we do tend to look to the US retail sector for inspiration as we consider what may lie ahead. So it will be interesting to hear Joseph's point of view today.
Thanks, Marcy. Really excited to be here, and thanks for having me down to the ARA. Really appreciate it.
And I'd like to remind everyone, don't forget, if you have a question for our panelists today, you can submit them now via the Q&A icon in the Eventcast app. Now let's get started. Over the past year, established retailers have clearly needed the agility and innovative thinking scale-ups could offer. But what's next? Will we continue to see these sorts of partnerships even as the crisis subsides? Over to Hilary and Joseph.
Go ahead, Hilary.
I think we will continue to see innovation drive the future, and I think that this event spurred it in the last year. But there's so much, customer preference changing and so much evolving that it's only going to speed up in the future.
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, it's this. So COVID times and where we're at now absolutely has driven a lot of new innovation. And when I think about innovation in general, I think of the combination of scale-up startups and large organizations being a great place to be because, as we all know, innovation comes in pockets. And you get pockets of people that can innovate where they have flexibility and they have a problem they want to solve. That's where us as scale-ups and startups, we're uniquely suited because we're flexible. We can take an idea, convince just a few people and run with it. Whereas if you're at a large organization, it's much tougher because you have to get so many broad users or stakeholders on board.
Well, scale-ups like Black AI and Observa are doing amazing work bringing AI and data capabilities into the physical store. What do these technologies mean for the future of bricks and mortar retail, Hilary?
Yeah, I think the physical presence isn't going to go away. If anything, it became more important with people being hyper local in how they shopped. But there's a lot of consideration whether a physical location is a flagship or a point of sale, and however you're using it. how you're getting the most out of that physical space. So, what data are you getting about your physical space? How are you optimizing it for either purpose? And as the speaker said in the last session, understanding that data and really driving your goals around it. So, if that's point of sales, is shrink increasing because the changing climate, or if it's flagship, is engagement increasing, and how is that kind of evolving and changing?
And Joseph, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, the change that we've seen is you've got a problem space in brick and mortar stores still, where you've got chaos in the store, things are changing constantly. We don't have real-time insight into what happens on the shelf. And I know that Hillary's company and ours are taking things at maybe a different angle, but we're both thinking about the same problem space. And we know that the more we can actually get to real-time insights in the stores, then the better we can optimize costs and sales that benefit brands and retailers. And I think that's where most people depend on their monthly sales reports to do their planning, but they can't really react. And the change today is that we're giving the ability for retailers and brands to react, and it benefits them both.
Breton, what about the future of logistics and supply chain in retail? Can platforms like yours help retailers adapt as Amazon, for example, invests in its last mile capabilities here in Australia? And we see even more controversy come out around providers like Deliveroo.
Yeah, it's a really interesting area. What I think the pandemic has really forced is the evolution of end-to-end fulfillment and customer experience around that. So our technology spends a lot of time bringing the customer of the brand back to that brand where they're fulfilling through a last mile partner. But it's really important to note that that is an ecosystem play. There are omni-channel experiences, there are multiple providers, and there are different experiences that brands can offer to fulfill the customer on the last mile. Our technology is really designed about bringing the transparency around fulfillment, customer experience, and digital enablement as the core. But to the point of what everyone's talking about now, the data around that network. What does it mean? How can we use it? And most importantly, as a retailer or a brand, how can we improve what we're delivering on based on the data that we see? Amazon, of course, are exceptional at this, but I think a lot of Australian retailers, particularly with the physical presence of the store format, have a fantastic ability to really extend themselves into that e-commerce fulfillment model and, of course, create a competitive advantage that's unique to them.
Joseph, when it comes to retail, it often seems like what's happening in the States today is an indicator of potentially what could happen here in a few years' time. So, Joseph, where is the U.S. in terms of enterprises and disruptors partnering to innovate? How has COVID upended the process for retail execution over there?
So, interestingly, the first problem that COVID caused was simply just getting things on the shelves. And I think everybody saw that worldwide, where it was literally the flour's out of stock, the toilet paper's out of stock, and we all ran into that problem. What we quickly realized was that wasn't really going to be the long-term problem. And the long-term problems that we already were working on, that most of the innovators thinking about supply chain, when you connect the supply chain all the way from the back end to the front end to the actual point of sale, those still play the same. People in the U.S., I think our numbers are still up over 90%, where we have the retail, brick and mortar retail, at least in the grocery space, is still 90% in the store. And you can imagine we still want to go there and we want to shop. We want to wear our mask because we want to actually make our selections and have both the things we plan to buy and then those other items that we forgot about what we saw and we had to have them because, well, frankly, because we eat every day. So grocery is always the best place for that. So as we look at the problems, we know products have to be on shelves. If they're not on shelves, people aren't buying them. It's still the biggest thing that is going to stay. And I don't think there's many innovations the next 10 years or so that are going to change that dynamic. We just have not seen things dropping. Is that going to be different in Australia? I don't think so. I heard on an earlier discussion about it sounds like the automated self-checkout has started. Well, we did start that probably 5 to 7 years ago here in the US. And yes, Amazon's coming with their auto store where you walk in and you basically never see a checker. You just fill your basket and walk out the door. But many other retailers will innovate with that as well. And so improving the shopping experience in the store, still 100% going to be a place that's going to be critical for everyone, and it's going to make every retailer competitive with the Amazons or other disruptors of the world. And so the three of us are here along with many other companies trying to solve those problems.
I love the common thread about the evolving role of the store and what we're learning. Let's look further into partnering for the future. I'll open this one up for anyone. When you're dealing with more established enterprises in retail, which might sometimes have risk-averse board members who are not digital natives or other stakeholders, how do you reassure them that this partnership is a safe bet? And I know, Brenton, you've got some thoughts on this.
It's a really good question. How do you basically get the airtime is really the question you're asking. And I think you have to be super relevant to the current problem, of course. That's a big precondition. But we, in our business, always talk about engaging multiple stakeholders. We like to have a lot of nodding heads around the executive table or a board table. And I think you need to do that by showing an ability to create agile development that can generate results very quickly. You've got to be able to pilot hard and fast. You've got to be able to do it with minimal disruption to the enterprise. Enterprises have a lot of problems that they're addressing at any point in time. And as a startup or a scale up, you're only solving one of those problems. So I think it's very important you can deliver results and ROI very quickly to enable your project to obviously rise up the ladder and become a priority implementation. And I think Australian retailers are very good at doing this. They're good at finding the gaps or the opportunities within their organizations. But of course, that is a challenge in how you get to that point. That's part of the skill of being a scale up or a startup.
That's great. I just want to add, I think, Brenton, you nailed it when you talked about the idea of pilot hard. So absolutely. I mean, I know our approach with customers to solve this particular issue is present pilot first, work with the customer on setting up the KPI so they know whether their pilot was successful or not. And then, yes, we ask for the longer term commitment so that we can really expand a program, but we really try to tighten up first. And I think it's a good message to any startup and scale up to do it, but also to the retailers and other large companies that need work done, that they can go and it doesn't take a lot of cash typically for a startup to run a pilot. So really, really important. The one thing I will add is partnerships. So for us, we lean heavy on partnerships. I'm lucky I've got a long history of working with Microsoft, and so I know how to partner with Microsoft as a company, and Microsoft is uniquely suited to this, where in our case, we're in their Azure store. Our customers can actually use their Azure dollars to spend on us, which is great. I mean, Microsoft makes it really seamless, and they also help making sure that the quality is there from their partners. In the U.S., we also have a lot of brokerages in the way that we operate in the grocery and drug space. So we have partners in that space, and some are very large brokers that can help kind of guide what your solutions are and ensure they match that up to the brands and retailers that you're working with. So never sleep on partnerships.
I think you make a great point about the ecosystem that's being brought together in new and different ways and how we're looking at partnerships differently. And from the other end, what would you advise enterprises to look out for when they're choosing a digital disruptor to partner with? Is it a matter of how that scale-up treats the customer data or the track record they've had with other enterprises? Hillary, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. So I think this does go back to the ROI and really having a strong business case, and from both sides working on what that is, and that track record does come into play. One thing I think is challenging is that if you're doing something new, it might not have been done before. So you do have to take leaps of faith or risks. But I think that's where, when you're working with a partnership and an ecosystem like Microsoft, there's a lot of ability to know that part of, being in the platform already, you've already been vetted. And then also starting small, as others described, where you're mitigating your risks, you're able to see results before you scale and have, the greater impact to the organization.
Yeah, if I can add to that, sorry, Marcy. I think de-risking the buying decision is super important. So I think pointing towards use cases and examples and case studies is absolutely critical. Of course, you've got to build those before you can present them, which is a very hard road. But once you have them, it's amazing the doors that will open from the context of the exploration discussion. And I think that's where most innovation obviously starts. It's can a problem be solved? Is there a solution that can solve it? And then, of course, is that solution robust enough and structured enough to work within an enterprise? And so it's very, very important to get your project management processes right, to understand, to the points that we've all mentioned, you're not trying to solve every problem. You have to narrow down into the particular KPIs to prove that business case, to make sure that it's super relevant and that it can actually work within the enterprise. It's a challenge, but it's a really, I think, exciting challenge for every scale up to take on, because at the end of the day, you're playing in the enterprise's world. They're not playing in your world. So you have to adapt and make sure that you can really map to the internal processes and the internal mindset around innovation.
Yeah, and I think one other thing is every enterprise has a lot of different stakeholders in an ecosystem, even within itself. So understanding what the ecosystem is within the organization and communicating it to the startup helps too. So whether that's a legal risk or facilities or whatever kind of challenges the organization has that are outside whatever the direct line of the project is. Interesting.
And of course, the risks of not taking that leap and not making a partnership are just growing. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on where you've seen these partnerships really impact and make a difference in the growth with your customers.
One thing we did during COVID is we enabled a lot of enterprises to adapt quickly, and it's an interesting dynamic when you think about what happened last year. Was it a sticky tape and twine to piece things together to survive, or was it around future strategy? And we had clients in both camps. So we had a particular large-scale client that was looking at store-based fulfillment for quite a long time before COVID hit. And of course, as soon as the lockdowns occurred, it was immediately implemented, and we enabled that shift to that model. Now, there's a lot of complexity around how that is executed, but I think you need to be positioned to innovate, positioned to take on innovative strategy. And I think forums like this are fantastic for encouraging that thought process. How do we challenge that at a board level and to a senior executive level to make sure that the enterprise is thinking in that way? Because there's no end of startups out there or scale-ups out there to assist with solving the problem. It's just around the mindset. And of course, the hardest piece, which is always the change management piece. But as was mentioned on previous panels this morning, that if the head is giving that direction, the tail tends to wag in the same direction. So I think that's super important.
My final question to all of you: can these sorts of transformations help our retail sector solve other challenges besides the ones posed by the pandemic? I'm thinking especially as Amazon starts to build up and either greater aspirations like climate change and sustainability. I'll just look at supply chain, for example. I see a lot of the possibilities with supply chain, but it's not always connecting the dots with the sustainability team and initiatives there. Is there an opportunity with your partnership to bring together the organization and help connect those dots and drive new forms of innovation?
Absolutely. I think what you've got to do is you've got to create the connectivity first off. So traditionally, supply chain's been viewed purely as an operational play, whereas we view it more as a marketing sales function that obviously works hand in hand with operations. I think it's then, where does the investment come from? Is it driven by the network that's actually executing and physically moving stock, or is it driven by those that are placing that stock into that network? We fundamentally believe the shift is now into the latter, that the brands are driving those initiatives. And of course, when we talk about environmental sustainability, it's around how can we minimize the impact on how far things are traveling, what type of fuels are being used to distribute, and how efficient is a last mile fulfillment strategy, for example, being on drop efficiency and drop rates. So it all comes together, I think, to your point, Marcy, and is a really valid point. And I think you need to create the project once again to create the opportunity or to create the outcomes, but I think it all does work hand in hand.
What a fascinating discussion. I think you've given everyone who's tuned in today a lot to think about. Thanks to all of our panelists and your insights. We'll look forward to hearing more, and I can't wait to see the lineup for the rest of the day building on these themes.
Thanks so much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.